أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وبعد. First, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Laylatul Qadr. Hopefully, this is the night, and happy end of Ramadan. We continue on our series on Maqasid and how to deal with the pandemic with the Maqasid Framework. Today we have a session entitled Benefits 3 Levels. And in the agenda, first we'll do a brief introduction about and a reminder about al-maslaha, and we've talked last few weeks about al-maslaha in more details. Muhammad Bil-Yamani will give us more information and detail and discussion, history and relevance on the benefits of the 3 levels, Then we'll open a Q&A to discuss and have questions on this first part. We then gonna listen to Dr. Jasir giving a perspective on the 3 levels, followed by Brother Khalid giving us some case studies on the 3 levels, specifically on the needs and luxuries. And then we'll open it again for discussion. And we close our session by introducing the pandemic case for Thursday, for this week. Now, in a matter of introduction, in previous sessions, we talked about the fact that the objective of Sharia are all about attracting masalih or benefit for the people. And we classified the benefits into levels, as you could see here, into validity. Some of the benefits are valid, others are not, are denied, etc. And then the other level of classification of masalih that we've done is the different component of masalih and the different scope of masalih. And we today we will be tackling the levels, or the 3 levels of masalih that include the necessities, which we have been talking about last couple of weeks, ad-daruriyat, and includes also the al-hajiyat, or the needs, and the tahsiniyat, or the luxuries. And so that will be this top left quadrant is going to be the focus of today's presentation. Without further ado, I'll introduce Muhammad, who will talk to us about these 3 levels. Muhammad.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Noordin, for the introduction. And as we said, the focus for today is the 3 levels in terms of scope. We'll go through them in terms of scope and in terms of how we can utilize them and use them, I mean. And we'll talk a little bit in the beginning about their relationship with the other categorization, because each category is serving a purpose, and this one will just link it with the other categorization. So when it comes to the masalih or maqasid in general, and they have, we could classify them based on different criteria. So now, once we start talking about classifying them or categorizing them based on their level of importance here, when we talk about level, it's more about what is more important and which is kind of necessity. It comes into the level of necessity or needs or luxuries. And I want to link it with in one relationship with the scope, how it's related to the scope, and how it's related to the validity of the maqasid. So if we are looking at it, we are looking at it from the perspective as level of priorities, how they are linked with the considered maqasid or the denied maqasid or the extended maqasid, and in the same time how they are related to the general or to the specific or to the elementary. So this is we'll look at it in small kind of brief relationship just to link them while we are going forward. So I will start in the beginning why we need the classification as criteria to start talking about maqasid. And by looking at the verses in the Quran or ahkam or the prophet or the deeds, we find that kind of this is the manhaj, this is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking in his revelation about his verses. He revealed verses and he said in Surah Ali Imran, for example, هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this verse, it is He who has sent down to you, O Muhammad, the book in it are verses that are precise and other that are precise. They are the foundation of the book. Hunna ummul kitab. They are the foundation of the book. And others, they are unspecific. And the verse is just I'm bringing it as an example here to say that the verses in the Quran, they are in different levels. They are the foundational verses and they are the details verses. They are the specific one, they are unspecific one. They are the most important one that you don't want to mess with, and they are the most contextual one that you need to understand beyond the wording of. And this kind of categorization, we find it also in the ahkam. Ahkam, we studied, for example, in the usul al-fiqh, we studied al-wajibat and what is required and what is kind of optional and what is mubah, what is kind of you can do it or not, and so on. This is the 5 level of ahkam. So why they are 5? Because they have levels. So this is kind of methodology that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even adopting his revelation, is coming in this perspective. Even the prophets, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the prophet, is talking about the prophet that they are ulul azm, the prophet that are getting in higher level, and the prophet that are not ulul azm, they are coming in lower level. And it's not only about 2 levels here, it's like they are kind of spectrum of levels, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a sense that it's not all the prophets are in the same level. And so on. So we find that one as manhaj or as approach that Quran is taking to give us the essence of his teaching. So coming from this perspective and as human experience, the classification make more sense to us when it comes to control an area of knowledge. That's kind of given. The scholars, when they start talking about masalih, they adopted the same methodology to look at the maqasid and say, oh, there are levels in the maqasid. So having said that, means that it is human being perception to bring the classification of the maqasid. So nothing say that this classification is final or this is the right classification. Matter of fact, that we have other classification, not only those 3. We have also the maqasid classified based on the good and the evil, which glorify or make in evidence more the ethical value as higher, and the other one coming in the bottom. So the level of priority here is coming from different perspectives. The other one is coming, the 3 levels that we will be talking today, which is adopted as a mainstream. This is why we are talking about it. It has its own limit. We'll see as part of today's session also kind of one of the intervention of Dr. Jasser talking about the limitation it has. But as a mainstream, we need to have this understanding and clarity how it comes that we have these three levels, and when it was adopted, what does it mean in the area of the maqasid. So the hierarchy here, if we can take it as we are studying the maqasid and outside the fiqh, for example, the hierarchy is part of the objectives and principles that we need to adopt whenever we are tackling area of knowledge and science. So as history, and just small stop here, emphasizing that is human production, and it was debatable, and in the beginning it was not only three. It was started by Juwayni when he started kind of conceptualize the priorities. At one point, he was talking about ta'abudiyat, and he was kind of segregating them from the level of the maqasid. He was separating them. He was making them separated from the mu'amalat. And only mu'amalat were, or the relational or transactional ruling that were here put more emphasis to make the distinction between levels there. And then Ghazali look at his work and then finalize it, and it says, no, there is no sense to even segregate those levels in terms of تعبديات or the worship actions or the transactional actions when it comes to us as, and this is the latest version even adopted by Shatibi. It was even when it was adopted by Tahir bin Ashur, he take it as is, but he starts looking at it in terms of please don't enumerate because it doesn't help to move on with the maqasid. But this is the historical. It started as ijtihad, as kind of try from scholars and get refined in the history. It doesn't mean it's the perfect one. It could be reviewed, it could be evolved, it could be transformed, and so on. So we'll stop here just to link those classifications because it will help us looking at those areas with different views. And it's not the classification between them; they are not independent. They are serving each other. So there is some level of complementary when you are looking at the maqasid and you classify them, or classify them based on the levels or based on the scope, for example. And here, when we're talking about the scope, and you take, for example, each level, when you're looking at the daruriyat, you will find in the daruriyat what is general, what is specific, and what is elementary. So, and this is kind of repeating. It's like iqamatul-din or iqamatul-salat. It's like you can make prayer, you can perform it, you can make it as the best as is. It has component which is necessity. How it's like the basic thing that at least you need to go and to worship as making salat. But in it, it has some specific elements. If you in terms of getting into the salat, in terms of requirement or not, or in getting in terms of elementary elements that could be in the necessities. So those three levels or the three aspects of the scope, what is general, what is specific, and what is elementary, we find it repeating in all the levels. The daruriyat, they have what is general, specific, and elementary in one of the areas, because we talked about daruriyat last week, and we are not going into that level of details in our today's session. But just when you think about the religion, or when you think about the nafs, the life, or when you think about the wealth, it's like take it from this perspective. Look what is general there. Look what is specific and what is elementary. And that helps a lot when you are looking at daruriyat. You don't come up with some level of generalization. Oh, daruriyat is religion, life, wealth, intellect, and And then the same thing for the needs, and same thing for the luxuries. Luxuries is, if you are looking at them, you will find some general luxuries, some specific that are adaptable only in the specific context when you need them, and some of them that's elementary, just you need them as a base for bigger one. So this is, we need just to keep it in mind, because it helps us when we are looking at those three levels, how we can decompose them and how we can come up with something that make more sense for us. We'll come up with more examples that may help in the moving forward. So when it comes to the second classification, so that one is classification based on the scope. Now is classification based on the validity, or based on the kind of the rulings. Like the ruling they gave us that there are some masalih or some maqasid or some objectives that are mu'tabar, like about making trading instead of making riba, or making a lot of rulings. All the rulings where they are talking about, oh, this is considered, this is denied. Or some of them, there are some silence there, which means they are extended. So this is the view of the ruling. When you're looking at the ruling, you are looking at them, they are formalizing and giving you, oh, this is valid, this is not valid, oh, this is kind of open, it's up to you, and you need to assess it in order to go for it or against it. Now, when it comes to your perspective as a human being looking at those rulings, you are looking at them and you are classifying them. Some of them are necessities or kind of daruri, which is necessities, or some of them are coming as a need, some of them are coming as luxuries, based on the situation that you are considering them. So it complements each other again here. But you need both of them, because even if it's considered, at one time it will be considered only needs, and another time it could be considered even luxuries, and sometimes it will not even need to be considered because of the situation of the daruris. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so the necessities makes what is what is allowed not allowed sometimes. And you need, or it helps you to deal with what is not allowed as allowed. This is the area of back and forth. So you need to take them when it comes to the implementation level. So keep the classification of those three layers and look at them through the lenses of these three layers. Look at what is considered, look at what is not considered, or what is denied, and what is kind of extended here. So
yeah. Can you give us an example, specific example for us to actually understand the concept of mu'tabar and mulghad? Give us a specific example of
yeah, sure. So for example, in the area of the progeny, for example, the progeny is about to make what is required for the life of the human being, which is it has level of the necessities, it has level of the needs, and it has level of the luxuries. And we'll come into this level of details. But take the progenies as area of fiqh, as area in the book. The progeny, they are saved in many areas by the formality, how you can with who you can make a relationship in terms of marriage, with whom you cannot make a relationship in terms of marriage. So this one, it gives you kind of sense what is mu'tabar and what is not mu'tabar. Now, when it comes to this mu'tabar, for example, this is kind of considered or not considered. So when it comes to your view as a human being, dealing with this fact that this is kind of considered as an option, and even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he has this companion coming to him asking about ونحن لا نتزوج النساء, so and we are not, we don't marry the women, he said, stop. It's not my way to deal with the revelation. I'm a human being, and I fast and I break fast, and I marry in my life. And what does it mean? It does mean it's part of the component. It was kind of clarified in terms of the ruling in the Quran and exemplified in terms of behavior of the Prophet. So when it comes to this area, you can see how, at which level this marriage, for example, this is a path to protect the progeny, at which level it will be kind of necessities, at which level what is the needs level in it, and what is the luxury level in it. So the basic one is to get married. That's the one. And the needs of it is like you need to making it known among people, and you need to have some basic requirement in order to making it kind of marriage. But the marriage is daruri. And then in order to complete that daruri, that's what is kind of necessity, you are getting into the level of the haji. You need to have some level of the income in order to get into that marriage. You need to have some level of facility where you need to live and so on. But it has another level of the luxuries in it. For example, you need to have good wedding. You need to have some happiness in that wedding, some songs, some whatever, that's making it kind of beautifying that ceremony by itself. So when you are looking at it as mu'tabar, for example, you are taking it in order to implement it. You are going through all the layers in order to consider them and to make them alive. So it's not mu'tabar that is kind of necessity. It's not systematic. It's the way you approach it, you can make sense of it. Let me give you the opposite, or the kind of the controversial part of it. Let's say somebody is not in his kind of social relationship. He's bad guy. He cannot make good relationship with another human being, and he has kind of awkward relation behavior and so on. What happened at that time? That marriage that it was kind of necessity as a general rule for him, it may become not, may become maybe needs if he can correct him, but it's not necessity for that guy because he may mess up with it, as it may become denied. So the same perspective as it's coming, looking at it from the perspective of the cases, how you can deal with it in order to implement it, and you will shift. You will shift. Those levels will help you to deal with what is considered, will help you to deal what is denied, will help you to deal what is extended. This is why the complexity of the case by case. So, but just taking it from the perspective that is complementary. So taking the nas as considered, or taking the maqsad as considered, or the objective as considered, is not enough unless if you projected in those three levels and the case that you are studying. So it may fit. It was coming as necessity, but it may fit only as a need for some cases or some luxuries, or maybe it's not even in that level of consideration. We'll come up and we can go back. Just I want to cover the basic, and we can go back if there is any more question for more details. So that one, we are extending our way we were looking at the necessities. So we studied the necessities last week, and we said, oh, the necessities, it's more about the religion, the life, the intellect, the progeny, and the wealth. And some of us may say, oh, if you're talking about religion, life, intellect, progeny, and wealth, it's necessity. And this is where the debate came in play. No, the more religion, the life, the intellect, and progeny are only fields. And within them, they have what is necessity, and what is needs, and what is luxuries. Each one of them has layers. Even when it comes, for example, وَأَقِيمُوا الدِّينَ, so you can perform الدين وَلَا تَتَفَرَّقُوا فِيهِ, so don't get kind of split in groups. So what does it mean? It's like you need to perform a deen as is. What does it mean? You need to go and make a sawm. You need to go and make hajj. But at which level it will become necessities for some cases, as it will become going for the prayer in the mosque, which is part of the iqamat ad-din. It's not necessity. So iqamat ad-din, or perform the religion, the Prophet ﷺ shows us how we can perform this religion. You can perform it by making a salat, but you can perform the deen by going to the mosque, which is another layer beyond just making your prayer. So going to the mosque is haji, is needs, but it's not at that level of necessity. So this is why it comes at with the point when we have the pandemic, for example, we can deal with the needs, and we're fine. It doesn't mean we are abandoning our religion. That means we are moving to the second level and we are questioning it. This need, it's coming in the mercy of dealing with another need. And we need to balance them. And this is the topic of the next week, balancing between the harm and the different benefit. But we need to keep that in mind. When you are dealing with the situation of the need in the religion, it's not the same thing as you are dealing with the situation of the necessities in the religion. And the same thing when it comes to the luxuries. It's like when you are coming with the good kind of clothes and coming as perfume to the mosque, which is more kind of luxury to one level, but it helps that psychology. It has a benefit, which is this is why the Prophet was doing it. It has a benefit because it's complement. It doesn't come up as haji, but it comes at luxuries. It has its own hasanat. It has its own rewards. And you are coming by fulfilling the level of the luxuries to complete the whole picture. So when you are looking at the religion by itself and looking only here, we are looking only at Salat, which is one of the maqasid because it fulfills the individual controlling his behavior, which is kind of the maturity of the individual in terms of the spirituality as in terms of the material, because it doesn't allow himself to get into the situation, the social situation that doesn't make any sense or kind of rejected. It's like تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر. It helps you to be aware about your not making a kind of silly, at least if we can make it that way, silly behavior in your life. So it makes you connected with yourself, with the purpose, and connected with your creator. At least this is a salat as a big picture. The salat is part of the iqamat al-din, which is to perform the religion. To perform the religion, part of this salat is necessity, part of it is a needs, and part of it is luxuries. Whenever you have situation to deal with this salat, think about all the layers and don't neglect the layers. It's not because luxuries is not, it's oh no, we can just reject it. No, it's part of the layers and it completes the whole situation. It gives you the flexibility when there is constraint, when there is mashaqqa, when there is difficulty, when there is kind of some hardship in order to perform it, but you need to think about it when you are doing the whole stuff. And do aqimu ad-dina wa la tatafarraqu bih, perform the religion and don't get kind of split in groups among you. It's like it's one of the ayat al-muhkamat. It's coming as general for all people. When you are dealing with the religion matter, think about that. And it's not only respecting, it's performing. Aqimu is a little bit more louder, more general, and more deep. So, and the same thing will happen for the life. The same thing will happen for the progeny. Progeny, we already talked about the situation about we cannot protect the progeny unless if you get married. So the marriage is become as one of the necessities in order to protect the marriage. But within that marriage, as we are talking about the what is kind of general and what is specific and what is elementary, you start talking about the wedding. What is the wedding? Which level is wedding is well performed? It doesn't have to come only with anashid, which coming from the mashriq or whatever. It comes with the culture of the people, of the local people, and this is how it works. And this is how it's making it more beautified. And this is the luxury part of it. And this is the socialization that comes within it. And this is where the individual and the group get connected in order to extend the maqsad. So it's one action, but once you start linking the three levels, you start touching all the dimension of the maslaha here, which is hereafter and the world, which is the spiritual and the material, which is what's human being as experience. It's like local custom way to deal with the wedding in the face of celebrating the marriage, which is coming from the divine. How you can link those two? By minding this both sides. What is as a human experience as a local, and what is coming as a teaching. And the same thing for the individual and the group there. And we talked about the Prophet ﷺ is part of this progeny, for example, is to respect the first period that you are building the trust between a couple. and you are building the mawadda, you are building the intimate relationship between this couple. So the Prophet ﷺ, in order to help in that matter, even the group stopped outside Medina, waiting for the guy, for the companion that he just got married before the ghazwa, and he's coming back. He just stopped for him to give signal to his wife in order to be ready to help in this building of this trust and mawadda and intimate relationship. So this is part of the luxuries that we need to mind, and it's not as essential. Maybe at what level it maybe becomes kind of a needs if everybody is missing it, and at what level it will become luxuries. But we need to mind it. So hopefully it makes some sense, because I know that this is one of the kind of point that we want to adopt moving forward. So here I will just try to give the essence of each level, inshallah. So we'll go through the necessities, the needs and luxuries from the not from the perspective of the details that we already talked about it last time, but only for the time, for the sake of making some cohesion relationship with other levels here. So when it comes to we already talked about the individual level last time, that necessities are the ones that they are missed. If they are missed, it could cause or lead to the chaos and lack of the required condition of a stable life. So all the life become really in danger or become in risk. Now let's look at for the community. Just I'm bringing the second level here, just to mind it as we are going individually, community, for all the three levels. For the group, what does it mean the necessity? The necessities, and this is kind of the work of Tar ibn Ashur. A lot of the work done in this area was initiated by Tar ibn Ashur and was kind of followed by other scholars right now here. So it's control and protect its own resources when the community or the country or even the human being as a whole, they are controlling and protecting the resource. It's like either it's coming from environment, either it's coming from the wealth, either it's coming from the trading, either it's coming from the way they are helping other communities and other parties in the society. This is one of the area that the necessities need to be minded. So whenever you are finding community group organization, they don't have policies that can protect their own resource. It's questionable. It's a little bit questionable. They don't have any process how they can deal with the day-to-day matter. It's like they are lacking the essential in order to protect the resources here. And the same thing in order to prevent the corruption or injustice or chaos, for example, within the organization, or establish peace with others. What are the relationship you are building with other kind of communities, with other societies, and so on. And here, just to link it with what we talked about it last time, is the necessities include the kind of all the three scopes, which is the fundamental, the specific, and elementary. We already talked about that. And the necessities can be differently defined based on the specificity of the case. This is why some people may get into the level to have the marriage is required for them. Some other people is not. This is kind of case by case, as it could be for the environment or for the time or for the constraint or circumstances of the specific community. It's little bit that has stable component on it, and it has dynamic component, and they need to be minded while we are looking at those components. The necessities required to be enabled. It's like if there is no effort, you cannot gain them. It's not coming by product. It requires effort, it requires planning, and they require to mind different side of the necessities. Move on. So when it comes to the needs, we are looking at here again from the perspective of individual and community or the group. So when it comes for the individual, it's when it is in the situation to try to get enough comfort. You are not in the comfort level. So it's not that comfortable to live all your life not in the comfort zone. Nothing comfortable. Nothing it's make some level of the comfort for you. or in a specific area. So, for example, maybe in the relationship within family, maybe in the relationship with your coworker, within this become a needs, and you need to think about it. What you need to deal with it in order to make it come in at that level of comfort zone, dealing with other people, working with them, or family, or kids, or something like that. And we can talk about it from the pandemic. Just mind the pandemic behind scenes and what you can think about when you are talking about you're not in the comfort zone. There are a lot of examples for the pandemic now. And pushing the harm, it's like the same thing. You're not about to die if you go outside. That's obvious. But it's you are in the level, if you have some illness related to the fragility of your body and the immune system and so on, maybe it becomes necessity to don't go outside. But if you are a little bit healthy and so on, maybe it's just in the needs that you don't need to go outside. For example, if you want to bring the food and so on, maybe for the people that they are in the level of the necessities, they need to find different way to bring the food to them. They cannot go outside. They are not tolerated. They are in the situation of the risk to lose their life. And this is to lose their life. And this is the situation that you need to assess at that level, or to get rid of difficulties. Some difficulties, it's part of your education, part of your discipline, kind of waking up in the fajr, even if it's difficult. The spiritual level that comes with it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have any level of discomfort. It has a level of discomfort waking up in the fajr. But that discomfort, it comes with a lot of benefit. It's like the same thing for the hammer, for the wine, or for the gambling, and so on. All the things that we are facing in our life, it has part of the comfort and non-comfort. You need to decide at one point which area you want to extend your action in order to fulfill what is the most beneficial needs. Not all the needs in the same level as we talked about. This is this is our way to think about different needs and how we can mature them, how we can assess the situation between them. Same thing for the community. Just I will try to speed up. Sorry. Organized and effective kind of community, developed capability, and for sustainability. It's like it's thinking in the terms of the long term, recognized and considered among other communities. It's like what is the type of relationship of the getting in the comfort zone, dealing with others. And the luxury one, the same thing when we are looking at the individual and the community level. Whenever you are looking at the beauty of the being or the well-being, when you are dealing with the well-being, or when looking at the jamaliyat, dawqiyat, whatever it comes to the beauty, whatever it comes to the taste of your what you like, what you don't like, it comes to this level of luxuries. Whenever it comes to something, it's not necessity, but if you did it, that make it even awesome, even better, even great. That's part of the luxury. It doesn't mean need to be ignored. That's the point. Luxury doesn't mean need to be ignored. Maturity is improve manners. It's like some level of the manners, eloquence, and having good relationship in inviting some people in situation and so on. Whenever there is a kind of means to do this level, it come up with its own benefit, and we need to mind that. When it comes to the group, whenever there is community, organization, group, that they are thinking about their individuals as they are thinking about themselves to achieve the greatness dealing internally. That's one area of to be dealing with this level of greatness and people belonging. People don't care much about leaving the group and the organization. That's really one of the area of a lot of improvement that need to be done. Community, society, country, and so on. Care about the beauty again, wherever there is something that needs to be nicer and you can do it. And attractive to other models when you are becoming kind of attractive
So here I may say one word here, but whenever you are looking at the necessities, we see that there are some dynamics there. Some of the necessities can become hajiyat or needs, and some of the luxuries can become needs, and so on. And what is the critical point here? What I want you to take from this one here. Whenever, for example, there are some needs and they are enduring, it becomes urgency to deal with them. Some necessities you can deal with them as necessities if they are coming from time to time. But if it becomes as endurance and you need to look at it, you need to look at it because that one, it becomes necessity. The same thing for the luxuries. If you are all the time not in the presentable way, now to be presentable, and it becomes a need. It's not only luxury because all the time is consistent, the same thing. If it happened that sometimes you're not at that level to be presentable, that's fine. But if it becomes kind of consistent, something needs to be considered at that level. And whatever it's need for the ummah, for the whole group, it becomes necessity for the individual. Even the individual is not in the level to live his life or his religion or so on, because the group is in the level to lose the status of necessities, you need to help the group. So it becomes as necessity and you need to deal with it individually as necessity. And this is from where it's coming, the perspective of dealing with the mortgage in the society where you need a vote and so on. I will deal only with this one as a reminder for us, because we already talked that the benefits need to be protected and so on. And then just what does mean protected, either as human experience or as a ruling? That means you need to fulfill the condition to have them established and to avoid the condition that make them disappearing. That's what does mean. So by looking only at the ruling, what makes that something kind of enabled, it's like even Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn al-Qayyim, when they are talking about ahkam, this is kind of critical point here, when it comes to do something, aqimu salat, perform the prayer, it's not the same thing as ولا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى. Don't. It's like there is a do and there is don't. And whenever there is do and don't, and you're looking at them, the do are more prioritized than the don't. And this is the approach that they are taking here. So the enabling takes priority over protecting. So enabling is to go further in order to perform something. Protecting is to go back in order to remove the harm. So removing the harm comes in the second as a secondary when it comes to something that needs to be performed. And we're thinking here when it's conflicting. We're not talking about, no, let me deal only with the do. No, when it's conflicting, deal with the do and less priority for don't. And this is kind of protecting. We'll deal with this, inshallah, in the next topic when we are talking about preventing the excuse. So what is here for us? So whenever we are talking about these three levels, we are looking at two areas. How we can prioritize our matter in case-by-case level, and how we can see in all the matters that we are dealing with them in our life, what is the necessity. We need to have this level of decomposition. So don't lose priorities. Don't deal only with the luxuries and you forget about the needs, or get distracted with the needs and you forget about the necessities. This is really matter. And the three levels is just give you the scope and the focus, how you can tackle those maqasid. And the coverage, whenever you are dealing with the necessities, it doesn't mean you're done. Deal also with the needs and deal also with the luxuries.
Jazakallah khairan, Muhammad. I think we're gonna move on to the next segment because we're running out of time, and then we'll have the question and answers after that. We have two segments. I wanted to give a chance here for Dr. Jasir commenting on the three levels to give us another perspective. And then Khalid will come and give us examples and scenarios on this. So this piece is critique of the classical classification.
It's such a pleasure. It's always a privilege to be there for the course. I will take you through a journey of a book that I've written some time ago now, maybe 15 years ago, published by IEEE about 10 years ago, Maqasid Sharia, Philosophy of Islamic Law Systems Approach. In chapter 1, I will give a very brief, summary of chapter 1, where chart 1.1 is talking about the hierarchy of the purposes. This is what Maqasid Sharia is traditionally about. 3 levels, as you can see. The bottom level, that's called faith, soul, wealth, mind, offspring, and honor. They call this the level of necessities, al-darurat. And then the second level, that is called needs. And then a third level, you can see the other block, luxuries. So 3 levels that usually scholars talk about in this traditional theory, in which the Sharia is trying to preserve hifz, or to do an inviolability, or to protect isma, or to even punish al-mazajir for the violation of these meanings, the faith, the soul, wealth, mind, offspring, and honor. And scholars had reached this over the centuries, and you will find in chapter 1 some details about some scholars and their theories and so forth. They reached this classification of the definition of good, the human good. What does it mean to benefit humanity? Is to protect their faith and their soul and their wealth, their mind, their offspring, and their honor. And this kind of classification then goes to what is called the needs, which is also human necessities, but at a lower level than the level of life and death. They said that, you know, trade is a need, and marriage is a need, etc., and roads and means of transportation, etc. And then luxuries. Usually, scholars talk about the beautifications, the beauty in our societies, and so on. They consider that luxuries, etc. There are a number of problems with this classification. You can read more about it in the book. But there are a number of problems, which is actually quite appropriate to start with, so that we can start to critique the traditional theory of maqasid before we can apply maqasid to the Islamic law or the Islamic ethics. Number 1 is that the source of these hierarchies of maqasid is not the Quran and the Sunnah. The source was fiqh, was the wealth of rules and the heritage of, if you wish, statutes or fatwas or opinions, edicts that the scholars had left over the centuries. And then other scholars go and survey these, or do what we call an induction on these, in order to come up with a theory based on the fiqh. If you go back to the Quran, though, this is not how the objectives of Islam are divided and classified. And what I'm telling you is my own research, obviously different from other scholars of maqasid who consider these to be also the essence of what the Quran is saying. I differ, and I take the evidence from the scholars themselves who developed the theory in the past, Imam al-Shatibi, Imam al-Ghazali, and so forth. And they looked at the fiqh. They looked at tafasil al-sharia, what they call the fiqh of the madahib and so on, not the Quran. You look at the Quran, you will find that the Quran is concerned first and foremost with an objective of at-tawheed, the objective of the oneness of Allah, and taking humanity towards guidance and so on. Al-huda, at-taqwa, or consciousness of God. You will find contradictions. For example, wealth, the preservation of wealth. Now, is not exactly a Quranic concern. The Quran is talking about the sin of the accumulation of wealth, without giving charity, obviously. But in order to make Islam, in its very basic level of objectives, about the preservation of wealth, we saw in recent years some people taking this and going all the way to neocon kind of capitalism, capitalist view of the world. And then they say, yeah, because we have hifdul mal, the preservation of wealth. And you can see how this fluffy kind of theory, how can it can open a lot of danger here on the message of the Quran. And this is perhaps one of the things I didn't tighten up very well when I wrote this book some years ago. Now in my research, I try to tighten up that argument. That yes, the preservation of wealth in terms of the protection of your property and so on, but this is not an Islamic objective. The Islamic objective is not to hoard, it's actually to give. The objective is to make you give and give in different ways. The preservation of offspring, you can also see, like even without going into the details of how the scholars came up with this, offspring is for men, you know, women's offspring is preserved. I mean, that lineage, the preservation of lineage, hifdul nasl, that is quite a man-oriented, man-biased kind of objective of the whole Sharia. And you can see that, no, it is actually, if you look at the Quran, it is actually about the family. It is about the couple, love and mercy and so forth. It's about the relatives, nasaban wa sihra, the other verses. It's about the children. It's about education. Islam aims not just at protecting a man's offspring and lineage, but rather something beyond that to the families, including obviously the lineage and these considerations. The issue of honor, also you can see al-ird. أصون عرضي بمالي لا أدنسه لا بارك الله بعد الأرض في مالي. The poetry that is by Hassan ibn Thabit رضي الله عنه, or even pre-Islam عنترة الشاتمي عرضي ولم أشتمهما والطالبين إن لم ألقاهما دمي. What I'm saying is that the honor in the Arabic poetry and the Arabic lingo is a very prominent word. And yes, it appeared once in hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, كل المسلم على المسلم حرام دمه وماله وعرضه. Persons, but عرض in the Prophet's expression is not translated as honored, honor. It is actually more dignity. The dignity is a sanctuary, yes. And here we are talking about human dignity. You are talking about human rights. And I mentioned in the book, and I stress it even more now these days, that no, human rights is not an Islamic objective as we define it in the international declarations, because that is man-made. And we are talking about Maqasid Sharia, the Maqasid that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed in the Quran. And they are not contradictory. This is not a binary black and white thing, but we have to be careful what to call Islamic and what to call compatible with Islam. Human rights, democracy, whatever, secular state, whatever you think is good in this world is not Islamic if it is not coming from the Quran. And it is as Islamic as it is compatible with these objectives of Islam, and how the objectives meet the objectives and the details of democracy or whatever it is that you talk about. So we are not really trying here to apologize for current systems or current ethics or whatever. If this is even ethics, it's just, rhetoric anyway, as, political scientists in the room would know very well. But we are not trying to apologize for any modern or contemporary terminology, but we're trying to look at common ground between the Islamic philosophy of, you name it, economics or politics, or the philosophy of humans, or the philosophy of law and so forth, and contemporary philosophies that have similar meanings. So when we talk about developing the maqasid to become contemporary terminology, we actually mean Quranic terminology, not necessarily apologizing for terminology from outside the Quranic lingo that the Quran had used. And therefore, when we talk about the preservation of mind, hifdul aql, it's not just about sobriety, as every scholar had said. It's actually beyond that, to the protection of intellect in general, intellectual pursuits, science, research, talab al-ilm, the pursuit of knowledge. This is Islam. But then we will have to be very careful not to bring in terminology that does not fit with the Quranic language. So anyway, so this hierarchy is also quite anthropocentric. This is just about humans. Islam is not only for humans. Yes, it's also for jinn, but it's also for the environment. It's for every living creature. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We have sent you, O Muhammad, as a mercy for the worlds, not just humans, for everything. We as humans, in the Islamic perspective, are supposed to be a mercy and caregivers for everything, because everything has a life and everything has a consciousness. Now you're talking about the Quranic worldview. Everything has a say, and everything prays to Allah, and everything fears Allah, and everything is aware. Everything that has a name has a spirit and has awareness and so forth. And we are supposed to be a mercy for everything, not just the humans. This is also very individualistic, what you see here in page 3, because we're not really talking about the souls of humanity, life in general, or the wealth or the economy of a whole community. We're talking about the individual, my wealth and my soul and my offspring and this kind of thing. But the Maqasid theory will have to go beyond the individual to the social welfare and the social interests and all of that. This is also quite static and doesn't have the dynamic view that allows this kind of theory to grow. And as I mentioned, this is quite fluffy, to use a very cynical word, because this could be misused in many ways in the name of the preservation of wealth or offspring or honor, whatever. People propose whatever that is against the basics of Islam and against the Islamic code of sin and virtue and all of that, in the name of human rights and so forth. And that is not what the Maqasid project is meant to do. It is meant to take us to the roots of Islam and not to dissolve Islam from the inside. This is also the theory that many scholars believe is the end of the road when it comes to Maqasid Sharia, and that is not true, because Maqasid Sharia is a whole way of thinking, is a whole methodology of approaching Islam, its law, its thought, and all the branches of knowledge under that. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khairan. So this was, we brought this intervention by Dr. Jasir to give a different perspective on the 3 levels. And I wanted to now, before giving chance to Brother Khalid to give his comment, just to remind us what Muhammad did. Muhammad had to leave because he has another meeting to attend to. Muhammad went through how dynamic should these levels be, and how you could go up and down on the level of severity and the dimension of individual versus group, and the human side versus the divine. Jasir said that that's one of the critique that he has with this old nomenclature of 3 levels, that it's very human-centered and it doesn't take in consideration the universe around us, that it's individualistic, not minding the society, and that is static, not dynamic, and that is fluffy, as he called it. And he meant by that is too loose, making it vulnerable for some people to misuse it. And we know that there are authors who actually adopting the Maqasid approach to undermine Islam in their writing. And last thing, he said that many believe that Maqasid is the end of the road, and he doesn't believe that. With that, I want to open the floor for your comments and questions. And please feel free. Go ahead. As you gather your thought, I'm going to invite Brother Khalid to give us some examples where the hajiyat and tahsiniyat, that is the needs and luxury, have been used in Islamic opinion. Khalid, please.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I want to introduce myself, Khalid Saad. We're going to give some examples today specifically about the needs and the luxuries in the Maqasid of Al-Sharia. So what are the needs? Without them, life will be harder. That's it. So one of these examples, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the permission for the people, for example, who has like disease or who's traveling during Ramadan, so they can have iftar, pregnancy, and for the woman, and while she has her monthly, then she can she has to break her fasting. And well, person cannot die from this, but things will be much harder. These things can elevate in the degree of daruriyat or necessities when, for example, the fasting will be harmful for the health of the person. In that scenario, then it's mandatory to break your fast, maybe for some disease, or you need some pills or something. In such scenario, it comes to the hajiyat, and one of the purposes of the needs is to protect the hajiyat or the daruriyat. There is too many things. There is hadith, and it's narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, and Ibn Abbas. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he combined the Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha. By the way, whenever we discuss such hadith with some scholars, you might be accused as a Shia, but in spite it's in Sahih Muslim and Sahih al-Bukhari, this hadith has been reported. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he combined the Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha. And whenever he was asked about the reason, and there was no reason, no disease, no khawf, there was no fear, there was no raining. So, and he was asked, why did he do this? He said, to get away the haraj, not to embarrass my ummah, or not to put the mashaqqa on my the hardness of my ummah. And nowadays, we face such things because transport maybe, or somebody spends a lot of time at work on something. So this is kind of rukhsa for them to do such combine. But there is one condition that they put it, the fuqaha, not to put it, to do it as a ada, like not to be as a tradition, taking in consideration the circumstances and the problems and the timing and the other things that you have. So regarding the needs, there is too many things that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for example, said, do not sell unless with something you don't have. So don't sell what you don't own or what you don't have. It's called bay' al-salam, for example. But nowadays, for example, if you want to go design for bedroom, of course, there is condition. I don't want to go with the condition. I'm just giving you something. You go and you pay for the guy who wants, the carpenter or something, who wants to design this. The other example, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited that camels are lost to be taken away. But in the era of Uthman, there was fasad, corruption, and too much dishonesty. They changed that, and they used to bring it to sell it and put it in the money house of the Muslims. And if the owner comes, they give it to the owner of this camel. The other thing, when Sayyidina Ali, he went with this and followed his steps, but instead he fed the camel in a way that doesn't make it fat or doesn't make it skinny. And whenever somebody asked, he would get it back. The other thing about Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu, for example, when he used Al-Shifa bint Abdullah as a monitor in the marketing, in spite there was opposition about this, because, for example, they said for Shahada needs two women, but he knew she's a clever woman and he used her for monitoring. The other thing that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he violated in the appearance, he violated the text, but he worked in the purpose. When people who had weak iman, they used to have allowances. Umar radiallahu anhu, he said in that era Islam was weak, now Islam is stronger. The other thing, when he stopped the hudud, especially the had of stealing, when it was starvation, he took in consideration the starvation and the hard circumstances that they have been living. The other thing that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, when they opened the land of Iraq, Ard al-Sawad, because they called it the Ard al-Sawad because it was very fertile land, and he took in consideration the opinion of Ahl al-Madinah, for example. One more thing, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, when there is hadith that said, if you're in a war and you kill a warrior, so you can take whatever they want. And when Bara bin Malik, he took around a lot of fortune, he said that's too much. We have to distribute it for the whole people. So in this, we say لا ينكر تغير الأحكام بتغير الزمان. You cannot, be saying it's an awful thing if you are changing the ruling by changing the time. We have to change the traditions. We have to change the advanced era. So sometimes people that they don't know in deep the fiqh, they think they violated the nas in the appearance, but in fact they tackled the context by achieving the purposes of this nas. The other thing about I want to go with the luxuries is about the tahsiniyat. One of the examples of these things about luxuries, for example, most of the people know this hadith. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he cursed that woman that does eyebrows removal and tattoos and the other thing that he used to make separation in their tooth or something. So why did he do that, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? Because it was a mark of prostitution in that time. It was bad for the bad sign for women. But of course, the time has been changed, and it's very normal for women to do like the eyebrow removal, for example, or do some luxuries for her husband. And one of the women came to Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, and she said, "Can I do some luxuries in my body and to make my husband more satisfied, and do not look for other women?" He told her, if she has the intention to do that for her husband and as a luxury for her husband, then go ahead. In spite the hadith that said, al-mughayyiratun li khalqillah, the one who changed the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, cutting your hair is changing for your khalq, or cutting your nail, but it's mubahat. And one of the things we have to know in the luxuries, it doesn't have to be always like something mustahab. Sometimes it has to be wajib. Like, for example, taking away the najasa. the impurity. It's from wajib, but it's still from the tahsiniyat. One major thing I want to give you an opinion about it is about statues or monuments. For example, the Ummah always said it's about statues or monuments or forbidden. Of course, this forbiddenness, it's not for lidati, not because for itself, because for a reason, because they made them gods without the God. Otherwise, Prophet Sulaiman, he had statues or something. So it's since this cause has been vanished, that people worship statues or build statues or monuments to worship them, then our great scholars that have been like Khawarizmi or other scholars, I don't want to mention, I don't want to be biased for anybody now. I think doing statues in Muslim countries for our people, that they have changed a lot of things in the history of humans, should be built, and this kind of luxuries. The last thing it's said about luxuries, that when the society doesn't like something, for example, when you eat in a street, it's not something people would like. And in the era of hadith, the people that know hadith, they said the Ahl al-Hadith, one of the things that if you do things that not likely in the society, they cannot accept the hadith from them. Jazakumullah khair.
Thank you, Khalid, for these examples. It's a lot of information that you shared here. I'd like to invite the rest of the audience, if they have any comments or questions, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to share something with everyone, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, and just to get to understand this a little bit better. So these these are the three levels of the benefits, right? So the necessities, the needs, and the luxuries. These are the levels of the benefits that will come out from the maqasid. Is that right? Am I understanding this right?
Yeah, so maqasid are the objective of the Sharia.
The objectives. Yeah.
And the objectives are there to bring the benefits. And the benefits are classified in these three levels.
Right, but these three levels, like basically, so the benefits actually, like any benefit can, and normally it is, actually shares all the three at the same time. So it's a necessity, it's a need, it's a luxury, if you look at it from a different perspective. So what an individual might see as a luxury, for example, can be a necessity to a community, right? And so I'm trying to understand, like, having these three classifications or the three levels identified as, three separate, or three, there are no hard lines between the three. And we have seen it, like when our brother Muhammad was talking about it, and how they do share, they do overlap, they do jump in and out at different situations. So my question is that, like, this identification and classification of the benefits as, like, with these three classes, where are we taking this to?
So one concept we learned in this series is that this science of maqasid is an evolving science. It's not final, because Al-Ghazali coined it at the 5 objectives or 3 levels, and we've seen in the history of that how his teacher Al-Juwayni had a multitude of classification here, where he called reasonable and not reasonable, but then Al-Ghazali made them classify them as 3. I think this is a matter of ijtihad. There is overlap, But what it's important actually to understand what is absolute necessary for life to exist and be and continue to be. And so hence the daruriyat. And so not all matters are at the same level. And that's one of the messages that Muhammad was trying to convey. And he actually gave the example of the Quran, how the Quran talk about the chapters of the Quran and not being at the same level. So that whole same concept that our benefits are not all the same level, because when we say everything is the same level, then we have no priority in life, and then we mix up priorities. So this filter allow us to put our priorities together. For example, somebody have a decision to make, or do I go to Hajj or do I get married? And this is a debate that you hear a lot. Where do you put them with a finite budget? And so those priorities, this classification help us in decision making in the day-to-day life. Now, these are not sacred classification; they're human-made, but we need them. We need that classification so we could maneuver the event of life and not exaggerate something. Like, for example, there's people who believe that the beard, if you don't have a beard, then you're really not a good Muslim. I heard a scholar saying there's nowhere in the Quran that the beard is mentioned. Yes, it's mentioned in the Sunnah. But when it comes to sizing the importance of things in Islam, we have to survey the Quran and see how Quran give importance to those issues. So when you see something spoken about like Tawheed, like monotheism a lot in the Quran, that's very important issue in Islam. These classifications were derived by scholars through their reading of the Quran and the Sunnah. I hope that I've touched base your comment. Go ahead, Baha.
Yeah, you did, and actually, I don't want to take anyone else's time, but I understand this. However, like in more recent researches, Hassan Farhan al-Maliki, and he's a Saudi scholar who actually has been talking about this for a few years until they put him in jail, and he's still there, like with no like a clear accusation of what or why. But yeah, he actually one of the things that he had he was doing his research on. He was saying that he was able to extract 16 to 22 objectives from the Quran, where they actually come after la sababiyya, for example, like وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. فالعبادة, for example, is one of the objectives, and it is in line, I guess, with what was said before. But he actually put a good way or a methodology of extracting these from the Quran directly, and he's saying like maybe the biggest or the most important four is, in his perspective, and still, like, again, like this is an opinion, is the ibtila, the what do you call it, like testing the people, and then justice, belief, or what you just referred to as Tawheed in a way. It's the Iman, and in specific the Iman Billah and Yawm al-Akhir and the after, like the Judgment Day. And then the fourth one is the Ibadah. And then he takes these and extract from them like even more. But these objectives become also become benefit to, like, these objectives like interchange, and then some of them become benefits to other objectives. And it's a long research actually, and I wish that he had put this in a book or in a written form. I haven't seen a written form of it yet anyway, but he talks about it in a couple of like a summary of these on YouTube videos. Again, I'm sorry, I'm taking like time of someone else maybe.
No, I think
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot comment on this specific speaker and his situation, but in general, we should not be penalizing people for speaking their mind and making ijtihad. That is where the ummah goes down.
Absolutely.
When, now some people could be inflammatory, could be saying things that the community is not ready for, could be wrong. That doesn't mean they're right. I mean,
Right.
could be wrong, could be right. But we need to let the discourse happen. And speaking about letting the discourse happen, I want to let Hisham also say something. Hisham, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. By the way, Baha, this he has research on his website. You can look at. I think he has written about his Maqasid, Quran Maqasid. I believe we have to look at this daruriyat. In my view, this is just a comment. For a basic Muslim, you should know it. You should know that there's the three levels: necessities, needs, and luxuries. But I believe if you go a little bit beyond and you start trying to make your mind about complex things, I don't think so. This classification would be always useful because it's changing as we know. It's sometimes needs becoming necessities, and sometimes luxuries, it may become necessities or needs because of the situations and all stuff. And there's endless of situations in life, and that's why I believe another tool is necessary for anybody that's making decision. But for us Muslim, just layman Muslim, I believe knowing these necessities, knowing that there is some benefit that is, yes, even its benefit, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call them benefits, but they're mulghad, they're rejected because there's more harm into it than the benefit at the end. I think this basic understanding is important for a mind, a Muslim mind, to be organized. But I believe if when I go beyond a little bit, start making decision, I believe this classification, I think will need a little bit more a different tool or more sophisticated tools to start making decisions.
And I think that's the point of Jasser Ouda in his intervention. He's trying to critique the classical division or classification of the benefits. But I think we can agree at least that we need a sense of classification to have the level of priority. Now, how the dynamism, the social versus and community versus individual, and all those aspects that Jasser Ouda talked about, and Muhammad also talked about inherently in his presentation. He always brings the slide talking about the different dimensions. I mean, one thing that actually was new to me is this slide here that Muhammad built. And usually, traditionally, when we think of the necessities and the 5 necessities, the classification of the religion, the life, the intellect, the progeny, and the wealth is usually think of in the context of necessities only. But Muhammad here, and this is not his own innovation, and this was historically talked about by scholars, remind us here that the needs and the luxury also could be in the area of religion, in the area of life, in the area of intellect, progeny, and wealth. So this is not unique just to necessities. And also he reminds us that another important concept that was applied in some fatwas is that depending of the scope of the issue, say for example, the need for housing in non majority Muslim country where there is no alternative Islamic funding. So that when the North American Council, and I read their proceeding back in the late 90s, when they made the fatwa that allowing people to purchase house to live in based on mortgage, they made it based on the fact that the need of housing here in this yellow level, the need of housing is so predominant in the community. So now it went from an individual to the community, that it raised to the level of necessity at the individual level. And this is a famous concept, not a new, but this was an application of that. Yesterday, as I was preparing for this class, I ran into a young man. He's well-spoken, and he was talking about maqasid. And then he was complaining how come the maqasid has become a way to undermine Islam, and so they made the riba halal, and he went on and on talking about this, because some people, they're so annoyed by maqasid, which is a bona fide science now. We don't have to say more about it because the last 6 weeks we've been just talking about how bona fide this science. People, they wanted to read the text literalistically, and don't wanted to engage the intellect in these classifications. And I was impressed. And the other thing that Muhammad did here in this slide is that he reminds us, anywhere you put yourself in this matrix, you still have to mind the different 4 dimensions, right? The hereafter versus this world, the spiritual versus the material, the divine versus the text, the individual versus the group. And again, I just gave an example of when you look at a need at the level of the community, it becomes a necessity at the level of the individual, and that goes through for the relationship between luxury and needs. So I think it's very important for us to look at the different scopes, the different dimensions, so we don't rush to conclusions, and we don't and we understand where the scholars come from, where they make certain decisions. That is not just a scholar just dream and answer and give it to you. No, they have a process, and that process is heavily anchored in Maqasid Sharia. So we are exactly at the time where we usually stop, but if somebody has any burning question, before we close, I wanted to introduce for you our Thursday pandemic case. So this is our pandemic case. I'm going to read it quickly here. Between individual and collective responsibility in the response to COVID-19. The subtitle, using the pandemic as transformative force to move forward as a global community. This is a very loaded title. So I'm going to be speaking on this on Thursday, and I'll promise you a lot more time for conversation, because we're only going to have one case this Thursday, because in past we had more than one case, and it actually cheated us from the interaction and the conversation. I want you to start thinking about it. We will be sending this by email tomorrow, but I want you to start thinking about the individualistic approach that certain communities and countries are using to confront the COVID-19 pandemic, but also to confront all bigger issues we have of global warming and environment issues and women issues and all the big issues that are plaguing poverty, governance, those big problems that we have we need to take lessons from COVID-19 on how to be more transformative in tackling these global issues. With that, if there is no final comment, we'll close here. Jazakumullah khairan. Enjoy your the night of the 27. Hopefully it's Laylatul Qadr. Hopefully we're all benefit spiritually and the presence of mind, and make dua for all of us. Jazakumullah khairan.